Good morning. In the tradition of Unitarian Universalists all over the world, I'm going to invite Molly to light the chalice, and she has some of her own words for that.
Remember Bob Farrington, may today bring forth transformation in ourselves, from grief, healing, from memory, wholeness, and from celebration, love.
Amen. Good morning again. My name is Reverend Lisa Perrywood. I am the interim minister here at First Parish in Wayland. We gather today to honor the life of Robert, known as Bob Salmon Farrington, Jr. On behalf of all Bob's family gathered here, thank you for joining us to celebrate his life. There will be some family and friends remembrances today, some beautiful music, and a blessing of Bob's return to the earth. We'll also hold silence in the Quaker tradition, and there will be time for a few people to speak from their hearts. Today we gather to begin to say goodbye to Bob, or continue to say goodbye to Bob, to remember him, to honor him, and celebrate his life. Let us hold stories, memories, word pictures of Bob in our minds and hearts. This is all part of grieving, part of remembering, a step in the journey toward honoring Bob both by living our lives as he would want us to live them. Let there be room for tears if that's what you feel. Tears are an expression of our love. Let there be laughter if it comes. Joy and laughter are part of our memories. Let there be stories, music, it all becomes part of our healing. Each of you knew Bob from different parts of his life. Continuing to share stories keeps his memory alive. After the service, you'll be invited downstairs to a reception where you'll be able to share more memories of Bob's life with friends and family. It is right that we come together today because human life is sacred. It is sacred in its being born, sacred in its living, and sacred in its dying. It's our responsibility to remember Bob, and it's also our joy and our honor to celebrate the gift of his life with gratitude. Let's begin with these words. In the rising of the sun and its going down, we remember him. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember him. In the opening of the buds and the warmth of summer, we remember him. In the rustling of leaves and the beauty of autumn, we remember him. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember him. When we are weary and need of strength, we remember him. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember him. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember him. So long as we live, he too shall live, for he is now a part of us as we remember him. And now we invite you to please rise in body or spirit and join in singing hymn number 159, This Is My Song, which you'll find in the gray hymnal, 159.
Good day. For those that don't know me, I'm Penny Farrington, one of Bob's two younger sisters, Patty Stuber is the other one. Bobby was my first friend. I wasn't his. That was probably Johnny, Michael, and Jean, the cousins, and the other cousins would come later. Since I was closest to him from 2 to 19 years, I will provide you with highlights from those years. Bobby had told people he was the son of the Aga Khan. I think Chris and Jane will attend to that since it was noted in his 30-year-old autobiography. According to Bobby, he was dropped off in the door of my parents' house, and Bobby thought they, the Aga Khans, would come find him and return him to royalty. But alas, it didn't happen. Auntie, our great aunt, who lived with us since Bobby was born, considered Bobby God. He could do no wrong in her eyes until senior year, but more later. Elementary school years were basically uneventful. In the 4th grade, he started his journey of having heart issues. He developed rheumatic fever, which kept him home from school for weeks. He had a tutor to keep up with his classwork, and I brought letters back and forth to his friends at school. He did develop 2 skills during that time, making model planes and ships, and for his mother and all those relatives who smoked, and there were a lot of them, he made mosaic ashtrays. Making model planes and ships, he continued all of his life. James will tell you about that. The ashtrays skill gladly disappeared. In high school, he wasn't thrilled that I was in the same building as him, and he asked me not to acknowledge him in the hallways. However, when a teacher we shared, they asked, "Are you Bob Farrington's sister?" Some would smile, others would just shrug and remind me to be good. He had a reputation. Bob fell in love with Molly because of her love of books. Bob loved reading and spent much time at the Whalen Library. The problem was he wasn't good at returning books. And it's been said that Bob Farrington probably paid for the extension of the Whalen Library building with all the fines he paid. And a fun fact you probably won't believe, Bob was awarded a varsity letter in high school. No Sally, it wasn't soccer. He was on the rifle team, and that made me very nervous that he knew he was capable of shooting me. Summer of 1969, and now this incident in the time between high school and college. This is where Auntie comes up. Our parents went away on a trip to Europe, leaving us in the capable hands of Auntie. You know that's the one that considers Bobby God with a capital G? The story goes that there were a group of boys thought it would be fun to drive around and spray people with water fire extinguishers. 2 cars went out. One car was smart enough to turn off the light bulb of the license plates. The other, not so smart. Which one was Bobby in? And to make it worse, it was the Farrington family car. As the night went on, the first phone call came from the Wellesley Police Department, looking for the owner of the Farrington car. Auntie explained that the owners were in Europe. She said her grandnephew was out, but she would talk to him when he got back. As the night went on, Natick, Framingham, and Needham police departments called. There was a pattern. Auntie was livid. God wasn't as godly as she thought. He returned to the house, and a long discussion ensued between he, Auntie, and the sisters. We all decided it was best to let it go and never discuss this with the parents, who would be home soon. Mom and Dad returned. Nothing was discussed until that Saturday when Bobby was at work. A policeman came to the family house, and Mom answered the door. The mom thinks the officer is looking for donations when he said he had a warrant for the arrest of Robert S. Farrington, Jr. Mom, of course, said, "Not my son. You must have the wrong information." As she chatted with the policeman and I heard what was going on, I called Bobby at work at Brocklemans nearby and said to get home immediately. Remember, there were no cell phones at that time, so it wasn't easy to get a hold of him. I suggested Mom to tell the policeman we would get back to them. Needless to say, there was a lot of discussions on the incident. It seems one of the victims had said they accosted her. They didn't. You all know my brother. Could he do that? No. Long story, an expensive lawyer was hired. Bobby was put on probation. He lost his license for 6 months, and if he didn't cause any more problems for a year, his record would disappear. For a young man just starting out to become possibly a lawyer, it really woke him up. Losing his license wasn't too bad since he was going to the American University in D.C. and didn't have a car. The thought of having a record certainly made him change his way. And Auntie, how did she handle it? She could never stay mad at Bobby. So when he returned in the spring to university, he drove his own first car, courtesy of Auntie. My brother was a good man. He was always there to help me, and I will miss him. I will miss the way he asked. When you asked him a question, he would answer with a question. Or when you tried to get him to laugh, he would do his best not to laugh. Instead, his noses flared. Then you know it was a winner. Recently, I had sent his birthday card. Molly said he laughed out loud. The big question was, did his nostril flare? She acknowledged he did. Thank you, Bobby, for letting me give you a laugh and a flared nostril. I will miss you and love you.
Hello, my name is James Farrington. I'm Bob Farrington's son. The other day I was able to go snowboarding for the first time in 10 years. I was a little nervous given that it's been so long without practice, but fortunately everything came back. Throughout the day, I was overcome by the cherished memories of family trips my father would take us on growing up, including ski trips. Those family trips were among the many privileges and opportunities my father provided that left us all with so many good memories. That was Dad, always putting our happiness before his own. However, his efforts as a father went way beyond just providing for us financially. From over-engineering a treehouse to teaching me how to make model airplanes, Dad's energy always seemed to be channeled onto what he could do for my mother, sister, and I. This is how my father spent much of his free time, selflessly. I'm not sure if Dad ever really knew what a significant impression he had on me from the very early days until very recently. I witnessed firsthand the pride he took in his role as a lawyer, father, husband, and an American. He instilled in me from a young age what it meant to have a sense of honor. He taught me core values that must begin from a young age. He taught me about sportsmanship, empathy for the less fortunate, respect for women, law enforcement, veterans, and although not a very religious man, a respect for God. He also told me that it was okay to admit when you were wrong and to never take yourself too seriously. He showed me all this by demonstrating it himself. One of the most valuable and well-known Bob Farrington attributes he left me with was the ability to carry a sense of humor throughout your life. I learned that this quality was not only useful for putting others at ease during difficult times, but also as a way of coping yourself. Looking back, I have a profound respect for his parenting style, especially as a father figure. In today's world, I suppose it would be described as very hands-off. I admire his approach, however, as it allows a child to find their way by learning firsthand. Dad always let me know he was there. He was there for me when I needed him. I will always remember the smell in my dad's home office in Wayland, his coveted leather briefcase, and all the legal pads surrounding it, as well as the sight of him reading the Globe in his bathrobe at the dining room table, or the sight of him watching the History Channel on the sofa with a our dog Amos curled up next to him. I will also always cherish the more spectacular memories I have with him. This includes riding in a hot air balloon with him as a child, then making a crash landing on the highway, flying in a World War II bomber with him over Boston, snorkeling in the Cape and the Caribbean, paragliding in Turkey. I will also remember the less spectacular memories like the countless BC football games and Red Sox games we attended together, going to a cabin in the middle of nowhere in Maine and gleefully witnessing my dad throw pillows at his friend throughout the night who was shaking the cabin with his snoring, visiting Civil War battles in Virginia on a father-son trip. Finally, of course, our family's place in the Berkshires will never be the same without my dad's presence. I can honestly say with 100% certainty that no one could ask for a better father. To this day, I strive to emulate him. I'm still trying to be more like my dad. It goes without saying that I will miss him dearly. Thanks.
Good morning. I'm Sally, Bob's favorite daughter. As I'm sure it's easy to understand, I found it very hard to sum up feelings and memories about Dad. So I thought I'd cheat a bit and take a leaf out of his book. Maybe it was the lawyer in him, but he loved making lists. We'd find them all over the house on long yellow legal pads or index cards. And maybe it was also the lawyer in him that made sure he put all writing down on easily destroyed or burned materials. The lists would be country capitals, measurement specifics from various model airplanes, years of various battles, and the relevant territories gained and lost. So he loved lists. So here is a non-alphabetical, non-sequential, and very much non-exhaustive list of things that Bob Farrington loved from the perspective of one of his children. I'll start with the classic. He loved very, very obscure and preferably very, very heavy military history books. If you were to buy one for a present, you either had to make sure it was published within the previous fortnight, or he would have already got his hands on it, or that it was published at least 4 decades before from a small printing press and not translated into many languages. Looking through his library, an example would be Finnish Alpine military tactics, specifically in the winter of 1941, specifically. He loved our screen sleeping porch in Wayland, where when we were growing up, all 4 of us would camp out, often there until it was cold enough to get snowed on. He secretly loved when battlefield tour guides got a fact wrong. But he would never correct them publicly, and only in the most egregious cases would he chat with them afterwards and subtly slip in the correct fact. He loved Massachusetts, where he called home for 73 out of his 74 years. That one year was spent his freshman year at American University. He said he transferred back to Boston because he couldn't afford the drugs in D.C., but I think he really believed in the weird combination of open progressiveness and tight tradition that make up this Commonwealth. He loved going out to eat. It was a lifelong love for him. It could be a Michelin star restaurant or the local diner, preferably Jewish. He just loved the act of grabbing a bite to eat with family, as long as he got to treat, and of course, over tip in all things. He loved working hard and being able to provide a beautiful life for his family. Maybe more so the latter than working hard, but he did it. When we were little, he would get up early to go to work, and we'd question why he'd make such a terrible choice to leave when it's cold. And he would always say, "I'm going to work to earn money to buy you food and toys," which was simple and convinced us it was a good idea. He loved playing cards, not so much particular games, but against particular people. He loved beating sore losers, so we learned pretty quickly to just be as blasé as possible after losing against him to lessen his satisfaction. He loved sitting at an outdoor cafe with a juice and a cappuccino and watching people and life and hopefully dogs go by. Secretly, again, he loved when people would argue that the Civil War was about states' rights, so he could absolutely tear into them, tell them why they were wrong. One time, when we were on a tour at the capital of the Confederacy, the guide described slaves as unpaid servants. Dad's extremely loud and pointed, "Are you kidding me?" to the entire group was the only exception to his never interrupt a tour guide rule. He loved being a lawyer and being known as a very, very good one. He knew he was trusted both for his intellectual and strategic abilities, but also his heart and his undeniable affection for his colleagues. He loved being impish, and I believe he was just like that from childhood until now, as evidenced by Penny. I think he was tickled to find out that James and I had served detention in some of the same classrooms he did at Wayland High School. He loved being a dad. I never questioned that. Very much a core part of him, how he viewed his role as a person, how he derived satisfaction out of life. He gave us such a gift, a childhood of feeling loved and cherished. He loved his friends, who made up such a large part of our lives. He kept them, and he showed me why it's so important to do so, and how wonderful it is to grow up with them. And by grow up, I mean survive your 20s and 30s, and so on. He loved knowing his history, and if you knew your history, your civic duties, and right from wrong. He didn't suffer fools, and he expected those around him to hold themselves up to the highest moral standards. I saw that as a kid, and I know his colleagues saw that at work. And he loved being so darn smart. He loved it. Loved being able to answer anyone's questions, especially on history, geography, literature. Our family's favorite pastime was to swap geography questions. The atlas made a nightly appearance at our table, often followed by the encyclopedia. And Bob loved using his particular set of memorization, writing, and funny bone skills to make people's days. And when it was needed, and he knew that. And I know he loved me, I know he loved James, he loved Mom, and he loved you all, and we all loved him.
Good morning. My name is Jim Marchetti. My wife Susan and I have been friends of Bob and Molly since the 1980s. And our children, Jane and Brad, and the Farrington children were born into that friendship. And the two families spent many happy times over the years, including skiing at Bretton Woods, hiking in the Berkshires, and on the beach in Cape Cod. I'd like to pause just for a few seconds to ask each of you to think about a quip, a joke, a classic Bob Farrington glance, a prank. I'm looking out at a lot of smiles, and I think those smiles must please Bob as he looks down at us. I first met Bob in 1982 in a cursory introduction when I started as a junior lawyer in the John Hancock Law Department. Shortly thereafter that short introduction, another new colleague and I stepped on an elevator in which Bob stood at the back. My colleague and I were talking about the announcement of an abrupt hike in interest rates in response to disturbing world events happening at the time, and how troubling it was, wondering what it would mean for mortgage rates, the ability to buy a house. From the back of the elevator, we heard exclaimed rather loudly, "Well, be that as it may, more importantly, what does this all mean for Bob Farrington?" We stepped off that elevator laughing hysterically. And I remember thinking to myself, who is this guy? In the years that followed, I had the opportunity to find out who this guy was. He was beyond just the funniest person I had or would ever know, but a man who really had his head screwed on straight. For me, he was a role model. First and foremost, Bob was a wonderful husband and father who put his family first. From the point that James and Sally were born to the present, Bob, along with Molly, was at various points a tutor, coach of various sports teams, mentor, supporter, endless source of entertainment, and more. There never was a time when we were all together when Bob and Molly and Susan and I didn't end up talking about our children. One of the many attributes Bob and Molly and Susan and I all shared, we have always been absolutely enthralled with our children. And chatting about the four of them was especially gratifying given the history that we shared. As many of you experienced firsthand, in addition to being the wittiest person any of us ever knew, Bob, along with Molly, was a tried and true friend, being there whenever and for whatever was needed. Attorney Robert Salmon Farrington, Jr., was an excellent real estate lawyer, having had a successful career at both John Hancock and GID Investment Advisors. Bob, as has already been noted, was also quite the intellectual, incredibly well-read, and most notably in military history. Relatively speaking, I would think that I was a World War II buff, except when I was talking to Bob. Bob was, on top of all of this, a surprisingly good athlete. I say surprisingly because his usual normal walk, toes pointed somewhat outward, was much more suggestive of Charlie Chaplin than of a versatile athlete. And I remember marveling at his walk as I would sometimes follow him down the hallway at John Hancock. To my very great chagrin, however, when we played tennis or squash, as we did through the years, Bob usually came away the winner. And on the slopes of Bretton Woods, he was the superior skier. He offered to give me lessons, but I couldn't afford his rates. As we all got older into middle age and beyond, through the avalanche of demands associated with family life, law practice, and a number of health challenges, Bob never, ever lost his puckish sense of humor. Early on in our relationship, given Bob's affinity for all things military, I would address him as Wing Commander Farrington, and he would address me as Capitano Marchetti, always employing the most ludicrous Italian accent you have ever heard. Not long after I began serving as in-house counsel at Raytheon Company, while in my office in a closed-door meeting, an executive assistant knocked on the door and entered excitedly to tell me that Special Agent McDonough from the FBI's Boston office was on the line and had to speak to me on an urgent basis. I, of course, took the call. Agent McDonough, whose voice sounded unusual yet somewhat familiar, informed me that my name had come up during a security breach investigation. After a few minutes of conversation during which my distress was absolutely palpable, the big reveal. It was Bob. In the years that followed, during my years at Raytheon, an executive assistant or main company operator or receptionist would periodically receive urgent calls from representatives of the CIA, DHS, and Department of Defense. All different names and all different voices. All Bob Farrington. Through our rich relationship and all the quips, witticisms, pranks, repartee, Bob and also Molly were special as people to Susan and me. We had the privilege of attending Sally and Antoine's wedding in September 2024. During several days of wedding festivities, although grappling with the myriad insidious symptoms of Parkinson's disease, Bob displayed an astonishing level of vitality, grace, and joy, seemingly casting off the physical limitations imposed by that disease. It was downright heroic. Clearly, Bob was someone incredibly special. His loss leaves a hole in my life that can't be filled. When I think of him, not just the funny situations, but all the different ways I knew him, notwithstanding that hole, the thought of him always prompts a smile. When it's our time to leave this world, for the people we leave behind, may the thought of us always trigger a smile, because isn't that among the greatest legacies any of us can leave? Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Chris Mena, and like Jim, I'm speaking as a close friend of Bob, but also on behalf of his many friends, at least the ones that started out in college and law school and continued for the years afterwards. Speaking about a close friend who has left us is a great honor, but certainly not a pleasure. It's a sad and difficult task to put into a few words a friendship of more than 50 years, which had many highs and very few lows, and ended much too soon. My friendship with Bob began by chance, when he transferred to Boston College from American University and landed in the dorm room next to mine. I'm sure he wasn't thrilled to be living with a bunch of guys in the class below him, but after a few weeks of getting to know him, I began to think of Bob as a friend and also as a sort of mentor. He knew a lot of things about a lot of subjects. His home in Wayland and his mother's home cooking were only a short drive from school. And best of all, he had a car, which opened up my world to places well beyond the BC campus. For a 20-year-old guy, Bob also seemed to have a lot of experience with the opposite sex. And he wasn't bashful about offering advice on the subject. Jane and I started dating about a year after I met Bob, and I'd have to say that his advice and encouragement had something to do with the fact that I've been married to Jane for 50 years now. Thank you, my friend. Bob and I shared many interests and mutual friends during our college years, and both of us managed to get accepted to BC Law School, which not only made it easy to continue our friendship, but also gave me a mentor for my first year of law school, which Bob had survived and assured me that I would survive as well. We also lived together along with Tom and Doug, who are here today, during my first year of law school until Jane and I got married. And some of the stories that I've already heard this morning from the kids and from Jim, they're so funny, and they reminded me about so many funny things that happened just during that year that we shared a room together in an apartment together. I'm not going to go into all of them now, but it just brought so many smiles and laughs to me while listening to those stories. Bob had a few habits that were a little bit unusual and took a little getting used to. I'll only mention a couple. He was addicted to chocolate milk in those days, and we shared a bedroom together in addition to the apartment. And about once a week, it would be my job, a self-appointed job, to clear away the empty or almost empty hot chocolate milk glasses from under his bed, where he put them every night. Sometimes there were things growing in those glasses, and it was always very aggravating to me, but that was just Bob. And the other thing I remember from those days was eating meals together with Tom and Doug, usually a few nights a week anyway, and Star Trek was always on the TV when we ate dinner together. I think, Doug, that was your fault. During our law school years, Bob was almost never seen without his huge briefcase full of heavy law books, and he even smoked a pipe for good measure. How could I not look up to him? On more than one occasion when I didn't understand an assignment or thought I might fail an exam, Bob calmed me down, explained things to me, and assured me that I would do just fine. Thank you, my friend. While our legal careers took us to different cities and different disciplines, Bob and I always managed to stay in touch, to get together regularly, to share our personal and professional experiences, and encourage each other through good times and difficult times. When Jane and I became parents for the first time, we asked Bob to be our son's godfather. It was a role that he delighted in and took very seriously. And beyond enjoying Jeff as a child, I like to think that he also mentored him as an adult from time to time. When Bob married Molly and asked me to be his best man, I felt that our friendship had reached a new level. Bob, Molly, James, and Sally have been family to me, Jane, Jeff, and Julie for all these years. He's Uncle Bob to my children. While Bob experienced health challenges in recent years, he didn't let those challenges get him down. You all know that. He never stopped enjoying his life, loving his family and friends, always planning the next adventure and being interested in just about everything. Our phone calls, visits, and meals together were always full of interesting stories, fond memories of our many years of friendship, and exciting plans for the future. Bob never gave up. He was truly a man for all seasons, a best friend for life. I will miss many things about Bob, most of them funny things that made him such a unique individual. He started every phone call with me by saying, "Yo." And he ended every phone call with 10-4. His voicemail messages always began with, "Christopher, it is I, Robert, who is speaking to you." He had a photographic memory of our college and law school years, including many embarrassing stories of our youthful exploits. Our conversations about politics were always animated, especially in recent years. Eulogizing a friend who was also a contemporary is a reminder not only that we're all mortal, but also that our friendships should be cherished, nourished, and never taken for granted. I'm grateful to Bob beyond these words for being that kind of friend to me, and I'm sure to many of us here today. 10-4, Bob.
We invite you now to rise in body or spirit and join in singing hymn number 298, Wake Now My Senses, in the gray hymnal. Please be seated. At this point in our service, we're going to have a few minutes of silence. This is in the Quaker tradition in which Molly was raised. Quaker meeting, which is their Sunday service, is generally silent, but when a friend feels moved, they may rise and speak to those gathered. As you are moved now, we invite you to please rise or raise your hand to speak, and Kathy Schmidt will bring you a mic to use. And I'm going to invite us to take a pause for a breath between each speaker. We'll have about 10 minutes or so for this silence and sharing, and I'll ring a bell to mark the ending of this time.
Thought I'd kick us off. Hi, my name is Antoine. I'm Sally's husband and Bob's son-in-law. Just to echo what Jim and Chris said, about 2 years ago, or I think last year actually, we were in Paris with Bob, and we were eating, and he with some of my friends, because Molly and Sally had gone on a hike together, and we had spent some time together, just him and me, which was really nice. I really appreciated just the few days with him. And we were having a really serious discussion because Bob was telling us about politics, history, everything you've heard that he knows very well. And suddenly he paused and he turned to me and he said, "Antoine, you're going to have to tell me one thing. What is the French word for chocolate milk?" And I said, "Bob, I don't think they have that here." But he said, "Who doesn't have chocolate milk? Thousands of years of history. Who cares about that? We need chocolate milk." So sure enough, with the phones in our pockets. It took us a while, but we did find chocolate milk, and so we enjoyed quite a beverage. I don't think the person who sold it to us had seen somebody gulp it down quite as quickly as Bob did at that moment. But yeah, so that was Bob in a nutshell. Sort of a man of deep intellect and really enjoyable to hang out with, but who had these moments of bursts of laughter and humor that I will always cherish. Thank you.
Hello, my name is John Williams, and I worked at GID where Bob worked, and I first met him when he joined GID in 1987. And right away we discovered we both have this fascination with military history, and particularly for me, First World War and Second World War British battleships. And we spoke about many details of engineering and battles. He even lent me 2 of those big reference books with Second World War British and American battleships. And we had many, many conversations about history, and I'm going to miss him. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Melissa Fong. I worked with Bob in the legal department at GID when I first joined in 2005. When I got there, nobody looked like me at all, so I was a little apprehensive, but Bob was wonderful. He gave me some of the best advice from a legal perspective and a professional perspective that I'd ever received, but the most fun I had with Bob was that he was up for anything. So those of you at GID will remember the ops conferences. So one year I asked him and he agreed to be Sonny to my share. And then one year, I don't know what got into us, it was Vegas, but the theme was weddings. So I went as the knocked up mom and he went as the baby daddy in overalls. And we're in the legal department, but we don't do that anymore because I'm general counsel. But you know, for 11 years, he was my best friend, and we were most definitely an odd couple, but we really fit, and I have not laughed so hard in a work environment as when, you know, I walk in and Bob's lying on the floor, and I'm not sure if I should go get the special machine, and he'll just be like, no, my back, you know, I just needed a few moments, or we'd find that there was this huge order of miscellaneous highlighters, and Bob has decided he's going to mark up all of his documents, and there's a specific sequence about why he's doing what he's doing, but he hasn't told anyone what they are. So we just have multicolored documents, but he always had a system. And I'll just echo that, you know, his favorite topic of all the things he talked about were absolutely his family. He loved talking about the adventures he had. And I am so grateful because I was able to see him this past summer, and he was we met in Newton at a restaurant, and I hadn't seen him in a while and hadn't realized that his mobility was a little bit affected, but it was not affected in his mind, because he came marching through with his walker and pleasant face and just pushing people out of the way and nodding, and just sat there and just regaled me with stories of Sally's wedding, and he just had such a fabulous time and all the traveling he was doing. So I cherish that memory that I was able to see him, and he was just so exuberant and happy, and I love the fact that that's the last time I saw him. So.
Hi, I'm Stuart, and I worked for many, many, many years with Bob. And I have only a couple things to add. Every once in a while, we'd chat, and we'd wander away from the law, and we'd talk about family. And if there's anything that I can sprinkle on all of us, I'm so pleased to see so many people here, is that Molly, Sally, and James, if there is anything as profound and consistently real, was his tremendous, tremendous love for you. And I walked with him through all of the adventures of the Farrington family. So I speak from many, many chats with Bob. And I wrote a couple things down that I will leave with you. For me, it is truly, truly difficult to accept the reality that you're no longer with us. Not only were you a fantastic lawyer in all circumstances, but a wonderful friend. I pray for you. There are always calm seas, fair winds, and peace, lots of peace.
Hello, I'm James' girlfriend, Gabby. I only knew Bob for short 4 years, but I remember the day that I met him. We met on Mother's Day 2022 at the reservoir by BC. I remember specifically that he'd given me his coat. I'm from Miami. I was very cold. He knew that. And yeah, he gave me his coat. He didn't even think about it. I also remember that we went to eat after, and he'd said that James was a hard sell, which made me laugh. But in all seriousness, I see a lot of Bob and James, and Bob always made me feel like family from the start. I think he definitely saw how much I love James, which I appreciate, and I'm very grateful to have known him for the short time that I did.
Hi, I'm Patty Farrington Stuber, and I am still, I guess, Bob's youngest sister. And that was a challenge to be the youngest in that family, because he was a jokester for sure, you know. I don't know if I thought it was that funny being locked in the basement where the boogeyman lives, but, you know, I mean, it happened enough that I got used to it. I married my husband at 22. I think Bob was about, well, he's 5 years older, 27. So I am so glad to hear that he grew up to be a respectable person. Because I left a guy that I was like, oh my gosh, he'll never find anybody. Nobody is gonna, I don't know, he was just kind of unto himself, I would say. And I did not know. I'm so pleased to hear all these stories, because I did marry a military man. I lived a military life. So we moved around a lot, and Bob would occasionally come visit, but I loved him dearly, and we came from a great family, and I'm so glad to see so many people here who loved him and respected him, and sounds like y'all adored him also. So anyway, thank you all.
My name is Amanda. I am Bob's niece. My mother is Penny. One quick story about Bob. When we went to France for Sally and Antoine's wedding, I caught wind that Bob was writing his speech for the night of the wedding, and something happened and he lost it all on his computer. He clicked something and lost it all, and I was like, sounds not about right, but let me look. We'll meet together in the morning and write something down. And he had like 3 different notes of a couple paragraphs that were all about history. And I was like, Bob, this is your daughter's wedding. We need to talk about Sally and Antoine, maybe how they met. So, we were in the living room of the main kind of house there, and starting to write his speech, and one of Antoine's friends sat down, and I think we started talking about American football and ended up derailed into some political conversation for about an hour and a half. Never got back to the speech with me, but he went back and was able to obviously write it all himself, and had wonderful things to say about Sally and Antoine, and gave a beautiful speech at their wedding. So it was just a great kind of time with Bob. And one last thing too, Bob always treated me like one of his own. When my mom had a stroke about 6 years ago, he was there with us and my fiance at the time, the whole time, in a very scary situation. And I remember sitting outside the hospital with him, just reassuring me that he was always there for me, and he would do anything for me and my mother, and he always did and always followed through. So I loved him very much.
Thank you all for your sharing. Everyone who shared memories of Bob this morning, we have painted such a full and beautiful and heartful picture of this man whose life we're remembering today. We know that nothing we say today will remove the sadness, but we live in a world where there is tremendous love and goodness and beauty, where there's laughter and forgiveness and healing, where springtime comes and each morning a new day dawns. And also, our grief is a holy thing. It's proof that another life touched ours in a profound way. It's the mark of love, the mark of connection, the mark of a life well lived. Hold on to these memories. Tell the stories that make you smile, the stories that make you laugh. Share the memories with Bob, with people who knew Bob and those who didn't. May they remind you of the beauty of Bob's life, of his passion and his connection to us. And may they bring you peace this day and every day. I invite you now to join me in the spirit of prayer. Spirit of life, mystery of death, we trust that beyond the absence there is a presence, that beyond the pain there can be healing, that beyond the brokenness there can be a new kind of wholeness, that beyond the silence there may be understanding, and that beyond understanding there is love. And now, may memories lighten grief. May the fire burning within each of us burn a little brighter because we have known Bob. We are grateful for his life. Amen.